This lesson is going to cover Chapter 3 in the first exercise. We are going to begin by creating a new part within SolidWorks. So hit OK. Once this part loads, the first thing we want to make sure we do is set up our units so that we're drawing with the correct units right from the start. Down here in the lower right hand corner of my screen, you can see that we're currently drawing in inch, pounds, and seconds for our units. I'm just going to open that up and confirm that you can see that. That's what we want to be in. If we were drawing in millimeters, we could change that right here. I'm going to edit the document units to extend out the decimal places from 2 decimal places out to 3 decimal places. Whoops. Okay, on page 3-4, if you're following along in your book, we're going to change the view settings in here to apply plain white option. So from the view heads up menu, we're going to go to plain white. If we now go to the view menu in the upper left hand corner here, and we go to hide and show, we want to make our origins visible right here. Now just want to make sure that you understand that we have a origin for our part, and we also have an origin for our workspace. So we'll talk more about that later on. Okay, moving along to page 4.4, we're going to select the front. We're going to start a new sketch, and we're going to select the front plane. So we're going to come up to our sketch tab here, select sketch, and then we want to draw that sketch on the front plane. We can click it here, or we can go in our feature manager and select. See, I think it's easiest here. You can see that that the front plane becomes orange, and now it has squared that up and we're looking straight on. First tool we're going to use is the line command, which now that we've activated the sketch, these tools become available to us. Grab the line command, and we're going to always incorporate the origin somehow into our part. So I'm going to scroll in a little bit. So I'm going to click there. If we click forward in the page, we're going to start by drawing a vertical line from the origin straight up. And we'll notice that when we get close to vertical, we get that little yellow square telling us that we've got a vertical line. We're going to try to create the sketch that the author has illustrated. As I draw this sketch, notice I've got like a rubber band. Whoops, if I go back there, I'm getting a straight line again. Got a rubber band attached to my last point. If you've lost that, you can just click on that last point and start again. I'm going to click. Oops, I did lose it. Grab the line. I just hit the escape button. Click right back on the end of the line and begin again. Now as I draw it, you'll see that there are these inference lines that sometimes occur. Be careful when you're drawing to not click when you get one of those lines if you're not sure what it's going to do. SolidWorks is assuming that I want this line to be half the length of the previous line if I click there. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to click up. I'm going to click down here actually a little lower. Come over. And you'll notice that I'm getting the symbols that tell me that these lines are horizontal and vertical. And need to make 4 of these. Now on my last line, notice I'm going to come down and get it lined up with my origin and take advantage of that inference line and make it such that the bottom of this line is even with the bottom of that line. Okay, we're on to page 3-7, and we want to turn on, or we're going to add relations rather. So under in our sketch menu rather, we're going to be able to come up here and delete or add relations. So relations are geometric constraints that are going to help define our part. So first relation we're going to add is to all of these top horizontal lines. We want to make them equal. We can do that by making sure that we hold the Control button and select each one of these. And then you'll notice that we have some options here. The option we want to select is, once we have all of these highlighted, we want to select the equal option, which is this guy right here. It's interesting, just moved some of those things over. So I'm going to undo that. I accidentally had this bottom line selected, so I'm going to hit the escape button, make sure nothing's selected, and then come back and hit the Control button, select all these, and come back and select equal. That looks good. All right, moving on. I'm going to add some additional relations. The next page, 3-8, we want to make these bottom lines all collinear. They're all going to be lined up with each other. So again, I'm going to click off, or hit the escape button rather, so I deselect those options. And now if I grab the Control button again and select all these, just by selecting them, it automatically activates the Add Relations button. And we want to use this option of collinear and line those all up. All right, moving forward. Next page, the author points out some of the other types of geometric relationships we can add. We're not going to get into those on this part, but we'll keep moving forward. We'll definitely use those later on. We're now going to add some dimensional constraints using our Smart Dimension command, and it's important that we take a look and see exactly where the author clicked so that our part matches his part perfectly. So I'm going to come up here to the upper left hand corner, select my Smart Dimension, and I'm going to begin by establishing the distance between these two lines at 0.5, and I'm going to move right along. Now sometimes it's helpful to not necessarily do them in the left to right order, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So you might think the next dimension to add would be this dimension, and I'm just going to leave that value as it is right now at 0.929. If I change that value to 2, it might take this line and push it over here and then make my part look kind of confusing. So it's sometimes best to take approach to adding dimensions like your outer dimension first. This is much smaller than what it's ultimately going to be. So I'm going to add this outer dimension in, make this at 6.5, and then come back. I'll have to zoom out now and add in these additional dimensions. You can always hit the undo button if you don't like what you did on the last move, and the escape button is also pretty helpful, which is on the upper left hand corner of your keyboard. So now I'm going to go back. You can change these values at any time. Whoops, I think I put the wrong number. Put 20 in there instead of 2. You can see that's exactly what I meant. If you put a number in that's larger than the previous number, it kind of distorts your drawing, and that can be a little confusing to start. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit the escape button, get out of the dimension command, and I'm going to grab this line, and you can see that I can move these dimensions around. If I grab the dimension line itself, I'll move the dimension. If I click on the dimension, it's going to think that I want to change the value. So I've neatened that part up. We're going to move on to adding the height dimensions, or the vertical dimensions. So I'm on page 3-11. I'm going to go back to my dimension tool and start adding these pieces in. Now when I put this first dimension in of a 1/2 inch for the height, notice it moved all 3 lines because we had that collinear relationship. I'm now going to select the bottom line and the top line and go ahead and add these in. Just follow along, add each of these dimensions in. And again, hit escape. I'm just going to grab these dimensions and move them out so that it's not necessary to do this, but it's a good idea to make sure you have a good reference of where these dimensions go to, because you may have a fully dimensioned part, but the dimensions may have been referencing the wrong features. So make sure you take a look and yours matches what's in the book. Notice that all of my lines have turned black now, and in the bottom right hand corner of my screen it says that my sketch is fully defined. This is where you want to be. A fully defined sketch is defined with dimensions and these geometrical relationships. So we can define the sketch 2 ways, with these dimensions and the relationships. Alright, I'm going to click out of here and move on to page 3-12, and see, sketch relations, just turning the sketch relations on and off. In order to turn those relations on and off, we can go to View, which is one place, and go to Hide and Show, and down here we have Sketch Relations. Now, that makes your drawing look cleaner, but it also may add some confusion if you're not aware of how those work. So you can always go back and forth and hide or show your sketch relations. I'm going to go turn them off again. Alright, now we get to the fun part. We've got a fully defined sketch. We're going to turn it into a solid. So we're going to exit our sketch first in the upper left hand corner. Our sketch is selected, so SolidWorks knows that this is the sketch that we want to extrude. If we accidentally deselect it, we'd have to reselect it before we could extrude it. Go to Extruded Boss, and now we have several options to pick from. The first thing we want to do is make sure we're paying attention to the author here, because he changes the direction. And notice the arrow is now pushing away versus extruding towards us. That's so it's going in a different Z direction. Make sure you do that, because your origin's going to be in a different place relative to the author if you don't follow along. I'm going to set that to 6 and hit OK. Now, I'm going to end this video here and start up with the second feature for this part to finish up the video. So we're going to go to File. Before I end, we're going to go to Save. As always, I like you guys to see if I can create a new folder here. I'm going to call it CH3 for Chapter 3 for my folder. And with all of your parts, I like you to name them with your last name, first initial, and I'm going to call it CH3 for Chapter 3 and hit Save.